That it's kind of weird, right? That's why I tell people, it's like people cry these days. It's like, oh, my child graduated from high school, right? And it's like, well, that's regular now. Like, you know.
Sure. My name's Adam, by the way, and our podcast is about you and your journey in music.
Oh, awesome, Adam. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. First off, tell me about where were you born and raised?
Born and raised in Newark, New Jersey.
What was it like growing up there?
Cool. It's adventurous. It's fun. You know, we got, the long history of Newark with all of the different people, the culture, the music, all of the different adventures, education, church, all of that. So, it's cool. Newark used to be a very diverse city. Now it's pretty much not that, but it's a great historically it's a great city.
Okay. And growing up there, you grew up kind of in the church, right? Or literally in the church, right?
Yeah, all in the church. Grew up playing music in my church, which my family had their church, which is a part of this organization called the House of God Church. And we grew up just going to church 4 days a week, spending hours and hours at church. That's where I gained all of my sort of musical knowledge, culture, and all of that. So,
was the rest of your family musical? I mean, like, how did you really get into music?
We got into music. Yeah, we was drawn to music, just because our church is a very musically dominated church. So all of the singing, all of the joy, learning how music in our church, which was, I'll say it again, which was sort of the main focus. It's not, I don't know if it was focus, but it's the highlight of the church, how music brought smile to people's faces, brought all of these different emotions out. So that's how I was able to take all of those experiences, and were able to share those with the world, and really wanted to, especially being that our church was known for the pedal steel slide guitar, which is sort of like this history of sort of like the Buena Vista Social Club, of this hidden tradition that was within our church organization for, it's almost 100 years now.
Wow.
So yeah, going all the way back to the 1920s.
That's cool. That's really cool. Did you have a pedal steel guitar player at your church prior to, and like, was there somebody there that kind of was your inspiration for learning that instrument?
Yeah. See, our church is an organization spread all across the U.S., especially all the way from Boston all the way down to Miami, Florida.
Okay.
So this small church organization, which is, looking back, it's sort of like a Chitlin circuit, right, of our church. So there were many different steel players in our church. So it's kind of like, it's like if you grow up in the Delta Blues, you got everybody's a star, everybody's a local star in amongst this Chitlin circuit. So that's what our church had. So I grew up watching all these different guys, and they became my inspirations.
Oh, was there a particular person that kind of took you under their wing and like mentored you at the instrument, or did you just pick it up?
There was a lot of guys. There was a guy named Henry Nelson. There was a guy named Chuck Campbell. There was a guy named Ted Beard, Calvin Cook, Leo Nelson, all of these different players in our church that helped me, especially, these guys were sort of the Muddy Waters, the BB Kings of our sacred steel gospel pedal steel tradition. So,
wow.
Yeah.
With that, like, was the pedal steel guitar the first instrument you learned how to play? Was that something that you were just immediately drawn to?
I actually grew up a drummer.
Really?
I was a drum player until I was probably 14, 15. And that's when I started to get into the pedal steel guitar.
As a drummer, did you play in the church as a drummer?
Played in the church. Oh yeah, I was a great drummer in church. I was the man.
When did you pick up drums?
When I was 5 years old.
Really?
Yeah. For most kids growing up in church playing music, you're drums is sort of always the first thing you pick up on, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like most kids want to be the drummer.
Right. I have a
So
5-year-old that wants to be the drummer, so we had to get him a kit over COVID.
yeah, exactly.
Electric,
Right.
so we didn't blow our ears out.
Exactly. Oh, that's the best move you made too. You made the entire best move with that one.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, because it's funny too, because I don't know how. I basically don't know how all my parents and neighbors and everybody dealt with me growing up learning how to play music in church. So I have no idea how they sat through that, all of those hours of loud, out of tune practicing. It's kind of brutal.
Yeah. When you started learning drums, how quickly were you able to play with the church band? Like, was there a moment that you remember that you kind of got like, okay, now Robert's good enough, he's going to play with the band today?
When you talking about the drums?
Yeah, the drum.
steel?
That wasn't that the first instrument you picked up on and played in the church, the drums?
Well, yeah, I mean, in church is always a process. It's like boot camp. You learn, you get to play like the final song of the service, and you grow old, and you wait till somebody doesn't show up on a weeknight, then that's like your big shot, and then you just get better. It's just, church is a boot camp of learning how to play music. I tell most people, most church musicians, I mean, it's always great to learn theory, but that's the beauty of growing up in churches. It's like you're always a performer. Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you learn how to perform because you're always playing in front of a crowd. You have so much trial and error. You got all of these people telling you screwed up, and you got to work on this that week, and you played great. There's all these moments happening. So that's the beauty of playing in church,
Mm-hmm.
where most church players don't have to go to a music college or a music school.
Mm-hmm. You get your own school, right? I mean,
you got your own. I mean, other than learning theory, which there's some cats that learn like that way at church. You can learn if somebody teach you the theory, but growing up in church is it's the ultimate everything.
sure.
It's like getting your master's in getting your master's degree, because you go through every level of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why when you look out here, most of the great artists have always grown up in church. When you look at James Brown, Al Green, Sly Stone came from church. Blind Boys of Alabama. You look at all of the old blues guys and all of the gospel singers, Beyonce. I mean, you can go. List goes on and on and on and on. We all kind of grew up in church, and it's not just music. You grow up in church. That's where you sort of get educated, man. I was telling somebody the other day, it's like, in church, you go to a thing called Sunday school as a kid, right? Where you learn to read and recite. But by the time you're a young child in Sunday school, you're already saying names like Nebuchadnezzar and Obadiah and, Jehovah, and all of these different names, right? All of these different biblical names. And you looking at these difficult spellings, and you're reading, spelling. Then you have to go before audiences and recite these different things.
You read aloud in front of people, right? I mean,
So there's, by the time you become a music artist or a orator or debate team, when you get older, like you already been through those programs, those free programs.
Sure. I know I've spoken with a lot of artists that kind of came through the church as like drummers or guitar players. Because like you said earlier, you already kind of, you have an audience there waiting to see you every Sunday or every whatever day you're playing in the church band. But it's like, you're not showing up to these, trying to cut your teeth in playing in front of nobody, right? For a while, like you already are getting experience performing in front of X amount of people.
You're already full on, man. There's nothing. you're because when you're playing in church, you're just like family and friends and people that history. So they criticize you all the time. So that's why I call it boot camp. So they like, you played the song wrong. You didn't do it right. You need to go home and practice. So by time, like I said, by time you get, I don't know how long you've been playing, by time you get out here in the world and you're in the massive world, in music world, and you're performing and doing all these different things. Performing is the easiest part, right? In front of an audience, because you've already been doing that. Right. And it's easier to perform in front of a smaller crowd than it is a bigger crowd. Right.
Sure.
Because the bigger crowds are like, you could always find somebody that's digging it or whatever. Right. A smaller audiences, it's like, you got these little bit of people that's they are like
really critiquing you.
Yeah.
And I would imagine playing in the church too, you're playing in front of people that you're going to see every week, right? I mean, it's not like you're going to Chicago and performing in front of a handful of people that you don't know at all. It's like, you got to come back next Sunday and face these people again if you screw up, right?
Hey, not even next Sunday. You got to, I mean, look, our churches with, like I said, at least 3 times a week.
Oh, sure. Okay.
You know, you got Wednesday, they call it Wednesday night service, Friday night service, and then you got Sunday. So you got 3 chances, you know, so you're performing, man. You're in there.
Right.
So,
wow.
And each night of the week is least amount of people in there. So you could be in there on a Wednesday with 10 people, you know? So that's the beauty of it all, and how actually churches sort of become this community connector in so many different ways, especially in the education side. Like I said, I mean, what's weird is when you talk to most church musicians or church kids, right, that grew up in church, since you've already been, and I remember growing up, you know, like you would go to church and you would do all this stuff, and then you would go to school and the teacher would go, who's going to read this in front of the class? Who's going to recite this? And you have all these other kids that didn't go to church that they won't get up in front of the class.
Right.
So it's like, you know, it's always like, oh, Robert will do it, or, you know, any one of the other kids that grew up in church, because we already, there's no stage fright. We already used to that, which, yeah.
That's fascinating to think. I never thought about that. It's like you have the leg up in that instance, like you said, debate club, anything that you really have to get up in front of people, public speaking wise.
Yeah.
You already have a leg up on
you're
everyone.
Forced to do it in church, right? Because you don't have a chance, because your parents are like, you're going to get up and recite this. Right. And you're giving big task every year, many times a year, whether it's the Easter speech or the Sunday school speech or everybody, let's recite this together. Let's sing together. Let's, you know, and God forbid if you're like a child star, then you're always getting called to sing or perform or do something. So it's kind of really, it's pretty funny, right? Like,
sure.
And what's weird is, like, you know, people ask me, it's kind of weird because you have music programs out here that, or certain different things that people pay for. And it's like, well, if you go to church, it's actually free, you know. That's like, if you join the church and you pay your little bit of tithe money, you get all these experiences for free. Right. The Sunday school is for free. Your child will be a better reader just by going to church, because they're reading the Bible, which is already hard. 10 grades ahead of what they're reading in church. Right. There's words you're reading in the Bible where people are learning how to do on the senior spelling bee, right?
Sure.
You already seen and read these words and you've heard them, right? Which is kind of, you know, I'm not trying to push the religion on nobody.
No, but it's facts, right?
Yeah. And that goes for any church, any religion, basically, right? If you are Jewish, or if you're into Islam or whatever it is, right? You go to the synagogue or you go to the mosque and you're exposed to all these different words, right? And recitals and different things and interactions and activities. That's why I see the church, you know, and me doing my program for the Robert Randolph Foundation being launched all throughout the churches, because churches are that community galvanizing, right? That just alone, the pastor is a star of the church, of that community.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody's like, oh, there goes the pastor, you know, hey, pastor, what do you think I should do this week? Right. It's kind of like us, people, like, you know, if you're a star, go like, hey, Robert, what do you think I should do at home? And so it's like, I don't know. I ain't got nothing to do with you. I'm just a star, you know, I'm just a wannabe rock star, you know? but it's kind of
wannabe is pushing it.
But it's just one of those kind of weird things that
Mm-hmm.
I think we kind of all lose perspective of. And I mean, when you think about it years ago, like with my grandmother and them who were growing up, like that's where you really learned, you know, that's where you really got advanced learning or any sort of learning, as you went to church and you had to organize and read and get books that you didn't have, because access to education in those days wasn't much, right? Everybody didn't go to school. That's the weird thing that people don't understand. Everybody didn't go to school. I mean, churches had to like say, we're having school to be able to teach these kids how to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of what was going on. And I'm going back, you know, anywhere from up into the 50s, right? Before public education became integrated, right? And all of that kind of stuff. But that it's kind of weird, right? That's why I tell people, it's like people cry these days. It's like, oh, my child graduated from high school, right? And it's like, well, that's regular now. Like, you know.
Sure.
I mean, you know how it is, right? I'm sure you got parents or grandparents, right? If you ask them, I mean, you probably never really ask them when they talk about it much, but most people didn't graduate from high school, right? You went to high school to get a skill, and then you went to work. By the time you were like 15 or something.
Yeah, you
14.
went to a trade. Yeah, you could halfway through high school, you can go to trade school. Like my uncle in particular, I think of, like, he knew he was going to go to college. He knew his, sophomore year, your 10th grade year, that, okay, this is not for me. I'm going to get a trade and then I'm going to graduate, and did really well for himself.
Well, yeah, most people did. I mean, that's how we got to this point. And then it became part of the whole overall like plan, like, hey, let's put everybody in school and let's have everybody learn. Right. Like when you think about it, right? What's the point of going to school and getting a D or an F? Right. The purpose is for purpose of you to go there to learn what you're trying to learn. Like if you get an F, that means you didn't learn it. You get a D, that means you didn't learn it.
Right.
But you get pushed on to the next grade, but you still failed at something that you were supposed to learn.
Now you're just trying to catch up, right? And
you're trying to catch up. So that's where education kind of plays this important role that I see, right? Because, I mean, I apply that to me, right? I mean, I was really bored with school growing up, and many things like I learned later on in life that as a child, it shouldn't be. I mean, granted, we're all learning different things constantly, but when it comes to education, as I see it, I mean, I think we're at a point now, especially when COVID, like the education system has been exposed, right? Because for many people, first of all, you got many parents that don't want to go back to that because their child has learned way more if you're like this proactive parent, because now you can teach your child whatever, right? I mean, granted, we kind of all want to push the kids back at school so we can have some free time.
Right. Actually work and get else done. Right.
But imagine a world if like you sent your kid to school for these specific things and they learned, they never failed. There's no need for a grade system. What's the point of that, right? What I mean by grade, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 11th, 12th, right? I mean, you get to the 12th, but you still failed math for the last 5 years.
Right.
But I got A's and everything else, and I got F's in math or D's, or even a C, right? That means you still didn't fully learn it.
Right.
It's like
partially learned it.
Well, yeah, in order for us to do this Zoom thing, right, we got to learn Zoom. So you got to work, right? Like, so it's like you have to learn in order to make it work. Right.
Sure.
Right. Sure. So you could understand it. So we all know, like, you spend hours and hours a day, even if you just say hours and hours a year. You go to school, you got a subject, it's an hour a day. Right. And for however many days of the year, and then at the end of the year, you get a D.
Right. What did you really learn? Nothing. You wasted an hour a day for however many days.
I just think that doesn't happen anything else. Like if you go to Berkeley to learn chords and notes, right? Berkeley School of Music, you're going to learn, though. They're not going to, right? You know what I'm saying? You're not going to,
They're not going to advance you if you don't know the scale.
Yeah, you're
right?
not going to get advanced. Yeah, like you got to know what's the theory. What are we teaching? Okay, do you understand that? No. Okay, go home. Do you understand it? Yes. Okay, now you move on.
Right. Right. That makes complete sense.
Yeah, but and some people, everybody's not meant to learn the same thing anyway. If that was the case, then like everybody that the block you live on would all have the same skill and work at the same job.
Right.
and you wouldn't be intrigued by conversation and asking people, wow, how'd you learn that? Wow, what made you want to go into that field? Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because everybody would be the same. Everybody would be doing the same thing. And
So in the course of education, right, especially, if you're Black or an immigrant in those days, right, in the Industrial Revolution, right? I mean, you see the old video with like the bell rings, everybody wakes up for work in the neighborhood, walks to the factory, work at the factory, ding, ding, everybody go home, in comes the next shift, right? That was the old model, right? And school was sort of based off that same model. Ding, 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 the bell rings, everybody go to class. We're teaching us. Meanwhile, you got some people like, I don't get this, I don't understand this, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. You get an F.
Right. Well, we'll take you to the next class.
Like, damn, is it my fault is it my fault that I didn't get? No, it's just like that child is different. He's a different learning experience.
Sure.
So as we know in church growing up. So all of these things are sort of common, which kind of pushed me passionately into my foundation specializing really on child education and in every form, really providing skill, allowing people to identify their skills, or giving them all the options to identify what their skill is and what skill they want to go into, right? What do they want to learn?
Is that part of what the Robert Randolph Foundation is? Is that
yes?
Back kind of, I'm curious to know kind of the backbone of that, or what kind of got you involved?
Well, we created a program called Create Your Future, and program which allows kids to identify their skills. So we've created all these different individualized learning experience for kids, right? Everybody from K to 12, right? To by time you become 16, 17, as you said, your uncle and the old model of going to school, like you already pretty much, first of all, you have a skill, and then which field you want to go down to, which will be able to allow you to find a job, right?
And focus on that skill.
Yeah, you focus on that skill. Like we all know, like you know how it is. You put a bunch of kids in a room, and if you put a bunch of things out there, right, you'll see different kids go to different stations. It's just natural, you know. Certain kid you'll find, and you see people, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this. I'm like, it's like, but also it's like, where's the world going, right? So it's funny because I was just talking to a bunch of kids the other day that were like 22, 23 years old, and they all been through college and got degrees, and and very intelligent kids. And I kind of asked them, I said, well, what was the one thing that I was like, what was the one thing that you guys learned in your whole entire process from elementary all the way going to college and graduating and stuff that you would change, or you would see should be the bare necessity to have all the tools to succeed? And they all said STEM and arts, science, technology, engineering, and math, right? So and I said, well, shouldn't that, so you guys saying every school should be that, right? She's like, yes. Because if you don't know, if you're not focused on those, then what's the point of growing old and saying you do something, right? That's where the world is going. You need those particular skills and that knowledge to succeed in life, right? I mean, especially as being an American child, right? When that's already going on in Japan and China and now in India and Africa and all these different places around the world. That's what we're doing. That's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing. Right?
That's what they're doing. Meanwhile, we're going to school here. And so it's just kind of really, the Robert Randolph Foundation really wants to work hand in hand with the school system to help them better understand, to help them out, to create new pathways. And hopefully there can be, I mean, because there's already a lot of different things like this going on around the country. So it's really just expanding, having me and my own experiences and what I see, what I've learned, and what I didn't learn, giving these kids those opportunities to be able to, have a skill, at least have a skill, right? Right. I mean, we all see kids, they like graduate from high school. It's like, hey, what can you do? Oh, I can't do anything. Like nothing, like no trade at nothing. No. I mean, I know how to, work. I know how to log on Instagram and
right.
Twitter. Right. So
yeah,
that's sort of the thing, man. Especially when you look at I've been to Silicon Valley. It's kind of weird because like you go to Silicon Valley, we've played private events there and done that whole thing. And you get there and you go like, man, I mean, look, it's like, wow, there's really no black kids here. There's no black people here hardly on Silicon Valley.
Sure.
And when you look into it, it's the exposure of it all, right? There's no exposure to get to that path, to be on that path, to be able to get to Silicon Valley. So, and I'm sure it's like that, while being black, but also in any sort of, lower class neighborhood education experiences.
Right.
You don't get put on that path. It's like, oh, this is a special thing. These kids had to go to so-and-so school. Like, why is that? This is where the world is going, where STEM, like everybody should be on that path.
Sure.
Right.
So with your foundation, you're teaching STEM, or are you providing like ideas and say like, okay, these are some cool, like,
yes, we have a whole curriculum out.
Do.
Yes, the Create Your Future program is a whole entire curriculum that we're launching in September that many people will be able to access online. We're going to be launching it in many church organizations throughout, so everybody could have the access, the scale to have these opportunities put right in front of them, right? And we'll work hand in hand with all of these different church groups, church organizations, non-religious organizations, people in different communities to be able to access this curriculum and have these choices to be able to succeed. And then, work hand in hand with different school boards around the country to see, to present to them, maybe there's a new curriculum, a new path, that works in the public school system, right? So I learned like New Hampshire and I believe Arizona and a few other states have already, since the pandemic, right, have said, look, okay, instead of it being mandatory that tax money comes out and goes into the state school budget for your kid, right? It's like, okay, so if your kid's going to do a different type of learning, this state money will then go to that.
I love that. Yeah.
So a parent is not put on pressure for their child to like want to learn Mandarin and got to pay $100 or $500 a week, right? Or want to learn any type of STEMs after school program or whatever it is. Those things are expensive, man. Like, oh yeah, my child's in the STEM program after school for 2 hours a day, 3 days a week. Well, how much is that? Oh, $700 a week. Well, gee, we already know like only certain types of people, A, can only afford that.
Right.
B, that means all the other thousands of kids just in that school district gets left behind. So.
Well, I love what you're doing. I think that's fantastic, especially right now, like with COVID and everything being kind of exposed in that sense. I think what you're doing is,
I mean, look, and the data's already out there. There's already like millions of parents that decide they do not want to put their child back into the system.
Yep.
Right. They've been exposed to a different way, and it's not for everybody. Right. I mean, I know it's not for me either, but it's not for everybody. It's, for a lot of people, you want to be able to have that choice. Right. And that's how it should be. Look, here in New Jersey, high schools, like my high school was built for, 15 kids to be in these classrooms. It's the same goddamn building, same school, same building. There's 30 plus kids in these schools, in these classes, The classroom's only built for 15 kids back in the 30s or 40s.
Yeah. Now you got 30 plus kids in a classroom, and how many of them
30
are being
plus
left
kids,
behind?
pressure's on. You got one teacher. Like, how the hell is that supposed to happen? Right? That's how people wind up with D's and F's and C's. Right. And it's like, focus on, having more focus and it's kind of like, you want to say, you kind of don't want to say thank God for the pandemic, but thank God for the pandemic because, I mean, look, we're on Zoom, right?
Right.
Like,
I know, something we'd never have had
we
this
would
conversation.
we would have been trying to figure out how to do this, right? Like, I'm just going to call him and interview him, and or hey, I need him to fly here, and we're going to do it in the studio, like,
yeah,
right.
And how did Skype miss the boat on this? That's my question. They were kind of the first thing, and then Zoom
Skype
was just
was
like
the first thing. Zoom just zoomed right in, and it
and
was like
slapped him across the
Microsoft.
face.
What is it? Teams and all those other things, right?
Right.
But Zoom swooped right in, and kudos to them, right?
Right. I know.
You remember, if you think back to, like, well, it's more than a year ago now, but like March, April 2020, it's like, hey, you want to jump on Zoom? Like, what is that? I don't have Zoom.
Right.
Like,
what are you talking
how do I work
about?
this thing? Yeah. And I can't even tell you how many foul ups that happen, right, with like Zoom performances or things like that, right? It's like, I can't get my guitar to be recorded at Zoom. I can't. Oh, this is a nightmare. And like, people paid, and like, sorry guys, I got to come back.
Right.
I know you paid for a private Zoom performance, but shit's not working.
Right. I'm sure you ran into some of that mess trying to do those live streams a bit, or
all of that. I finally gave up. I just decided I wasn't going to do it anymore, because I was like, I'll do interviews. I'm not doing any live Zoom things. It's like, I give up. It's just, it doesn't sound good. There's no audience here. That's the beauty. Like, that's the thing that motivates me to play music. It's like, I've been playing music in front of, between churches and going out and play, like, live has been a thing. And like, I mean, granted, I need to play music, and fans need to hear music, and we need to have that sort of therapeutic energy and that mental health fix. Sure. Right. But I was like, hey, go get another band. Let me recommend you.
Here's 5 people that are doing this great.
Because I'm out this year on Zoom performances,
Well, you do have some in-person ones coming up, right, at the end of the month?
Yeah, we got a lot of dates coming up. We'll
fantastic.
Be all we'll be in the Midwest with Buddy Guide, and we're doing a bunch of shows with Dave Matthews. We're doing some of our own, and knock on wood, hopefully we get to play the shows with these variants coming back out and mask mandates and stuff. But we all need it. We all need it to happen.
Have you had a chance to perform in front of anyone yet, or are these shows coming up?
Yeah. We've played a few. Yeah, we've played about 5-6 shows already.
How was that? Was it pretty emotional coming out there for the first time in a year?
It's all great. It's all rusty and great. And the biggest thing that, and I learned that from Warren Haynes, like, who's such a great singer, and actually a couple other people, like, these vocal cords are like muscles, right? It's like trying to bench press, and like your whole life you've been using these things, right? Especially performing, and then everybody's been off. So now you get back on tour, like, it's like trying to go back and like do some squats. It's like you got to start back. It's like, oh, whoa, what's going on? You're like, you're like, oh shoot.
Got to start low, start slow.
Yeah, we've been used to belting out, 5 times a week or 15 times a month, and it's like you've been at home, like, hey, little Johnny, put down the toys. Hey, come on. Hey, we're gonna be quiet for months on end and watch everything on Netflix.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm excited that you're able to do this and get back out there, and hopefully before with like you said, mask mandates and all that, hopefully that'll all be a thing of the past here soon enough. And I appreciate you talking with me today, Robert. You've been great.
Well, thank you, man. This was a blast. I love talking, and that's what I love to do now, is talk.
I love it. I do have one more question for you before I let you go. If you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Advice for aspiring artists: to try to be as original as you can. Try to embrace don't let nobody tell you if you're on the right path of musical influences. We're all different. Try to be as humble and as open to corrective criticism on your way up as you're getting better, and just keep at it. Music inspires and lifts so many different people. I mean, I'm sure like you go to a party, somebody's or wasted, somebody grabs a guitar, somebody starts singing, and all of a sudden that brings a whole newfound joy, and that'll just always be there. So play music with passion and love, and don't let nobody tell you, don't try to get into an argument for anybody to change your influences. It's like the Beatles or Zeppelin. Who's better, Hendrix or Hendrix or this one, right? Or in Jersey, we got Bon Jovi or Springsteen. Screw you, man. You don't like Bon Jovi. I hate you. Bon Jovi's better. Bring it back.